Welcome back to Secrets Exposed. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. You're the reason these stories worth sharing. Tell us where you're watching from, city or country. We're amazed by how far these tales reach. Subscribe our channel and press bell icon to get daily new and amazing stories for you. Alright, let's begin. The February night was sharp enough to sting the skin, a thin film of frost glazing the sidewalks and car roofs. Ethan Cole pulled his truck to the curb 1 block away from his house. Engine low, headlights off. He wanted the element of surprise. Valentine's night wasn't supposed to start this way, but he'd planned a quiet ambush of love. Roses lay on the passenger seat beside a small velvet box, and in the paper bag at his feet were strawberry cupcakes, Noah's favorite. He smiled faintly to himself, picturing Mara's face when he walked in early. He imagined Noah squealing over the frosting, Mara teasing him about being sentimental. Tonight, he was going to make everything right. Lately, Mara had seemed distant. More phone calls in other rooms, more evenings of vague errands. Ethan had noticed but forced himself not to suspect. He wanted this Valentine's to pull them back into orbit. His phone buzzed on the console. A subject line flashed on the lock screen. Results ready, confidential. Ethan froze. It was the email from the DNA lab, the one he'd try not to think about. 2 weeks ago, a simple blood type chart from Noah's school science activity had left him unsettled. Noah's O negative didn't match either his own A positive or Mara's AB positive. He told himself there were exceptions, but the math nagged. He'd ordered a test, fast-tracked it, then buried the envelope in the back of his desk drawer. Now the email was waiting, just 1 tap away from certainty. He locked the phone without opening it, shoving it deep into his coat pocket as if it burned. Not tonight, he told himself. Tonight is about family. He slipped out of the truck, bag and roses in hand, and walked the short stretch of icy sidewalk to the back door. The porch light glowed faintly yellow through the mist, a halo in the cold. He turned the key softly. The house should have been warm with music and laughter, maybe the clink of glasses or the sound of Mara humming as she prepared dinner. Instead, silence pressed against his ears. The only sound was faint, muffled, coming from deeper inside. Something slow, rhythmic like a record turning on low volume. He frowned. Then he heard it. A hiccup, broken by a small sob. He moved toward the kitchen, each step careful. The roses trembled in his hand. Noah sat at the kitchen table, small shoulders hunched under the golden pool of the lamp. A scatter of red and pink markers littered the table, their caps rolling toward the edge. He was clutching a sheet of paper, pressing it close to his chest like it could protect him. His cheeks shone with fresh tears, lips wobbling as he tried to swallow them back. Ethan dropped the roses onto the counter, his heart plummeting. "Buddy." His voice was gentle, barely above a whisper. Noah startled, then quickly wiped his face with the back of his sleeve. He slid the paper across the table. Ethan picked it up. It was a heart, drawn large in red marker, but cracked down the middle, jagged like broken glass. On one half, Noah had written Cole. On the other, something scratched out, erased so hard the paper was almost torn. "I tried to make a Valentine's card," Noah whispered. His voice was small, ashamed. "But Mom said I spelled it wrong." "Spelled what wrong?" Ethan asked carefully. "The last name," Noah said, eyes filling again. Ethan felt the breath leave his lungs. His gaze flicked toward the hall. That's when he noticed the music, faint but clearer now. An old standard, slow and intimate. "The Way You Look Tonight." He recognized it. It wasn't their song. "Where's Mom?" he asked. "In the living room," Noah murmured, head bent. "She told me to stay here, not to make noise." Ethan bent down, scooping Noah gently into his arms. The boy clung to him, face buried in his shoulder. Ethan held him tightly, every muscle rigid, his mind spinning. From the living room, the song swelled, wrapping the house in a rhythm too soft, too private. He moved slowly down the hallway, Noah in his arms, toward the faint glow of firelight. The smell of wine drifted out. At the threshold, Ethan stopped. His chest tightened. Through the doorway, in the warm flicker of the fire, Mara was dancing. Not alone. Mara moved in the living room with the ease of someone who had rehearsed this moment. Her red dress shimmered faintly in the firelight, clinging to her frame, the silk scarf at her neck fluttering as she turned. Across from her, a tall man guided her steps with practiced confidence. His palm pressed at the small of her back, steering, holding. The music played low but insistent, romantic, deliberate, meant for no one else's ears. Ethan's body went still at the threshold. Noah shifted in his arms, sensing his father's stiffness. His small voice whispered, "That's the man from the picture." Ethan glanced at his son. "What picture?" But Noah clamped his lips shut, eyes wide, and buried his face into Ethan's chest. The man spun Mara gently. She laughed, a sound Ethan hadn't heard from her in months, soft and unguarded. Then her eyes lifted and locked onto the hallway. The laughter died mid-note. Her body froze, stiffening beneath the man's touch. The hand on her back slipped away as if burned. "Ethan," Mara breathed, her face drained of color. You're home early." The stranger straightened, shoulders broad, jawline sharp under the dim light. He didn't look afraid, just tense. Ethan noticed the deep dimple in his left cheek when his mouth twitched. A dimple he had seen 1,000 times before. Not in Mara, not in himself, but in Noah. Ethan stepped into the room slowly, each footfall heavy against the wooden floor. He held Noah close, the boy clinging to his collar. His gaze never left Mara. "Who is he?" Ethan asked, his voice level but edged with steel. Mara swallowed hard. "This is Julian," she said quickly. "An old friend. He's just helping me rehearse for a showcase. It's for charity. You knew I'd been dancing again." Ethan let the words hang in the air, weighed down by their hollowness. He looked at Julian, then back at Mara. "Helping you rehearse," he repeated. "On Valentine's night?" Julian cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "I should go." He moved toward his coat draped on the chair, but Mara's hand shot out, brushing his arm. Not holding him, not quite, but stopping him all the same. The gesture spoke volumes. Noah whimpered softly, still clutching Ethan's shirt. Ethan lowered him to the floor gently. "Buddy, go to your room," he said quietly. "Keep the door open." "But you didn't do anything wrong," Ethan assured him, bending to meet his eyes. "Just go." Noah obeyed, shuffling toward the hallway, glancing back one last time before disappearing. The faint creak of his bedroom door echoed. Now it was just the three of them. Ethan's hands flexed at his sides, the roses and cupcakes already forgotten in the kitchen. Why was our son sitting alone at the table, crying? His eyes drilled into Mara's. Why did he tell me he spelled the last name wrong? Mara's lips parted, but nothing came out. Her throat worked as though swallowing glass. Julian shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening, but he said nothing. Ethan stepped closer, the fire painting sharp lines across his face. "Answer me," he demanded, his voice low. Mara drew in a shaky breath. "It's not what you think," she said quickly, desperation coating each word. "Julian and I, we were only dancing. It's innocent." "Innocent," Ethan repeated, the word tasting bitter. His gaze flicked to the scarf at her neck, crimson against her skin, the exact scarf he remembered from an old college photo Mara once showed him. In that picture, she was bowing alongside a young man with the same sharp jaw and deep dimple as the one standing in front of him now. "Doesn't look innocent," Ethan said flatly. "Not to him. Not to me." Mara's eyes filled, her shoulders trembling beneath the weight of the moment. "Ethan, please, let me explain." Julian shifted again, then finally spoke. His voice was low, steady, but guilt threaded through it. "This isn't the right time." He turned to Mara. "I'll go." Ethan raised a hand, stopping him mid-step. "You're not going anywhere," he said coldly. His stare cut into Julian, then snapped back to Mara. "Not until someone tells me the truth." The fire popped in the silence. The song ended, leaving only the thrum of Ethan's heartbeat pounding in his ears. Mara's lips trembled, her hands twisting together as if praying. "Ethan," she whispered, "please don't do this in front of him." Ethan's eyes hardened. "I already did," he said, and for the first time in years, Mara dropped her gaze. The air in the living room thickened, pressing down on all three of them. The fire snapped and hissed, casting restless shadows against the walls. Ethan stood rooted, his jaw tight, his chest rising and falling with deliberate control. Across from him, Mara clutched her hands together so hard her knuckles whitened, while Julian shifted his weight uneasily, clearly caught between staying and fleeing. Ethan's voice finally broke the silence. "You said he spelled the last name wrong." "Which name?" "Mara." Her lips parted, then closed again, her eyes darting to Julian before snapping back to Ethan. "It doesn't matter." "It matters." Ethan cut her off, the calm in his voice more terrifying than if he had shouted. "Our son sat at that table with tears on his face. He drew a broken heart, Mara. That's not nothing. He spelled something wrong, and you corrected him. So tell me, what name did he write?" Julian shifted again, running a hand through his dark hair. The dimples in his cheek deepened when he clenched his jaw. He didn't look at Ethan. He didn't dare. Mara's voice came small, almost childlike. "He wrote Ward." The name dropped like a stone in the room. Ethan's eyes snapped to Julian, who now stood exposed, his posture betraying guilt even though he hadn't yet confessed anything. "Ward," Ethan repeated slowly, his voice sharp as glass. He turned his gaze back to Mara. "And you didn't correct him, Nicole?" Mara shook her head, tears welling. "I told him it was wrong. I told him never to write it again." Ethan's throat worked, but his voice stayed low, icy. "Because it's not wrong, is it?" Mara froze. Julian finally spoke, his voice deep but unsteady. "Ethan, maybe we should." "Don't." Ethan snapped, his eyes blazing toward him. "Don't you dare say a word until she answers me." Mara's hands trembled as she pulled at the silk scarf around her neck, twisting it, unraveling it, as though the truth itself was choking her. "Please," she whispered. "This isn't the moment." "There's never been a better moment." Ethan shot back. He stepped closer, his shadow falling across both of them. "You've had years to tell me. You had chance after chance. And tonight, Valentine's night, I come home to find my son crying alone, and you," his eyes cut sharply to Julian. "You dancing with him." Mara's chest heaved, her voice cracking under the weight of her secrets. "Ethan, it's not what you think. I didn't plan for this. Julian just came back into town, and what?" Ethan demanded. "You just slipped right back into step with him like no time had passed. You told me this was a charity rehearsal." His voice dropped, cold enough to chill the fire. "Charity doesn't make a boy cry in the kitchen." Julian finally raised his head, his eyes meeting Ethan's. There was no malice there, no arrogance, just quiet regret. "He doesn't know," Julian said carefully. "Not really. He just senses something. Kids know." Ethan's blood roared in his ears. "And what exactly is he supposed to sense, Julian? That his mom's been lying to him?" "To me." The room went still again. Mara's tears spilled freely now, streaking her cheeks. She whispered, "Please, Ethan, not like this. Not in front of him." Ethan glanced down the hallway, where Noah's door was cracked open, the faintest sliver of light spilling out. His heart twisted. His boy was listening, of course he was. Kids always listen hardest when adults wanted them not to. Ethan dragged a hand over his face, his breath shaking. He wanted to scream, to rage, to smash something just to release the pressure building in his chest. But he didn't. He couldn't, because Noah was there, and Noah needed his father to be steady, even if the world was crumbling. He leveled his gaze back at Mara. "One last time," he said, his tone as sharp as a blade. "Tell me who Julian is. Tell me why my son is writing his last name." Mara broke. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the edge of the couch, her hands covering her face. "Ethan," she whispered through sobs, "please forgive me. I never meant for it to come out this way. I thought I could protect us, protect you. But the truth." She looked up at him, eyes swollen, voice barely audible. "The truth is complicated." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. "Then start untangling it. Because tonight, it's coming out, complicated or not." And in the silence that followed, Julian's eyes dropped to the floor, his shoulders caving in as though he already knew what Mara was too afraid to say. Mara's sobs broke the fragile quiet, each one shaking through her as if her body had finally given up holding the secret. She pulled the silk scarf fully from her neck, crumpling it in her fists, her eyes darting between Ethan and Julian like a cornered animal. The firelight flickered, painting her face in alternating guilt and fear. Ethan remained standing, his arms rigid at his sides, jaw locked. His silence was louder than any scream, and it forced Mara to speak. "I met Julian years ago," she began, voice trembling. "Before you and I. We were serious. I thought it was forever, but then it ended. We went separate ways." Her eyes glistened as she looked at Ethan, desperate to anchor herself in the story. "And then I found you. You were different. Safe. Kind. You didn't ask me to perform. You just loved me. I thought I'd close that chapter." Ethan's voice was low, controlled, but edged with fury. "And yet here he is, in our house, on Valentine's night, dancing with you." Mara flinched at his words. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. He came back into town last year. He reached out just once. I ignored it at first, but then I started going back to the studio. Dance was my escape, and Julian was there." Ethan let the words hang, every muscle in his body taut. "So you lied," he said finally. "Every time you said you were running errands. Every time you came home late." Tears streamed down Mara's cheeks. "I wasn't cheating, not like that," she insisted weakly. "We danced. That's all. But every step with him reminded me of what I'd buried. What I'd hidden." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "And what exactly did you bury, Mara?" "Because my son sat at that table crying over a heart split in two, and he wrote another man's name." Julian shifted uncomfortably, his voice low. "Ethan, don't." Ethan snapped, his gaze cutting like a blade. "Not until she tells me." Mara's shoulders sagged. She looked toward the hallway, with a faint line of light under Noah's door betrayed as eavesdropping. Her voice broke when she spoke again. "When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked," she whispered. "Julian and I had ended just weeks before I met you. I was lost, broken, and then you came into my life. You were steady. You made me feel like the world wasn't collapsing." Ethan's stomach dropped, the pieces aligning in a way he didn't want them to. "Are you saying?" Her sobs silenced him. She covered her face with her hands. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought maybe it didn't matter. You loved me. You loved Noah before he was even born. You were there at every appointment, every late-night craving. You were his father in every way that counted." And her breath shook. "I told myself it was enough, that it didn't matter whose blood ran in his veins." The fire cracked violently, as if punctuating the confession. Ethan staggered back a step, his hands flexing at his sides, rage and heartbreak colliding inside him. "So you let me raise him," he said, his voice trembling but low. "You let me believe he was mine. You let him believe." His throat closed. He turned away, gripping the edge of the mantel so hard his knuckles blanched. Julian finally spoke, his voice heavy with guilt. "I only realized it a few weeks ago," he said. "She sent me an old photo of Noah, just casually, not even thinking. I saw him in it. The dimple. The look. I knew." Ethan spun toward him, his eyes burning. "And what? You decided to step back into their lives? To dance in my living room? To play father behind my back?" Julian lifted his hands in surrender. "No. I told her the truth had to come out. I didn't come here to steal anything. I came here because she said tonight she would finally tell you." Ethan looked at Mara, his breath jagged. "Tell me? Or break me?" Mara shook her head violently, tears flying. "No, Ethan, I was going to tell you because I couldn't keep lying anymore. Because Noah deserves to know. Because you deserve to know. I asked Julian to come, not to flaunt, not to betray, but because I didn't have the courage to face you alone." Her voice cracked into a whisper. "I thought if I could stand in front of you both, I could finally say it." Ethan's chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, the truth clawing into him with each inhale. His vision blurred, not from tears but from the weight of betrayal pressing against every nerve. The room was silent except for Mara's sobs, the fire's hiss, and Noah's faint sniffles drifting from down the hall. And then Ethan's voice cut through, quiet but lethal. "You should have told me years ago." Mara's eyes closed. She nodded, broken. "I know." Ethan's fists clenched, the anger trembling inside him, restrained only by the thought of the boy who still believed in him down the hallway. "Tomorrow," he said coldly, "we deal with this. Tonight, You stay away from him." And with that, he turned his back to both of them, walking down the hall toward Noah's door, leaving Mara and Julian frozen in the firelight, their shared secret finally dragged into the open. The hallway was dim, lit only by the sliver of light spilling from Noah's cracked bedroom door. Ethan stood outside for a moment, steadying his breath, forcing his fury to stay buried beneath the surface. He couldn't bring that storm into his son's room. Not tonight, not ever. With a slow push, he opened the door. Noah sat cross-legged on the bed, clutching his stuffed bear, eyes red and wide. He'd clearly heard enough to understand that something terrible was unraveling. When he saw Ethan, his lips trembled. "Dad, did I do something wrong?" The word "dad" nearly broke Ethan. His throat tightened, but he forced himself to kneel at the edge of the bed, placing a steady hand on Noah's small shoulder. "No, buddy, you didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault." Noah's eyes filled again, his voice cracking. "Mom was mad at me. She said I wasn't supposed to write that name. Why can't I? Is it bad?" Ethan swallowed hard. He wanted to tell the truth, but the boy deserved the truth in pieces, not blunt edges that cut. "It's not bad," he said carefully. "It's just complicated. Grown-up complicated. But what you need to know is this." He pulled Noah into his arms. "I am your dad. Always. That will never change." Noah clung to him, burying his face in Ethan's chest. "Promise? Promise," Ethan whispered, pressing his lips against his son's hair. The door creaked softly behind them. Mara stood in the frame, eyes swollen, scarf dangling limply in her hand. She looked smaller than Ethan had ever seen her, stripped of her composure, trembling as though she didn't belong in her own house. "Ethan," she whispered. Ethan didn't turn to her. He stroked Noah's back until the boy's breathing slowed, then gently laid him down, pulling the blanket over him. "Try to sleep, buddy," he said softly. "I'm right here." When Ethan rose and stepped into the hallway, Mara followed, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry," she said, tears slipping freely. "I never wanted to hurt you. Or him." Ethan spun on her, his voice low but searing. "You had years, Mara. Years to come clean. Every birthday, every school play, every night, I tucked him in. You watched me love him as my own. And you stayed silent." His chest heaved, his control beginning to crack. "Do you have any idea what that does to a man?" Mara's hands shook as she clutched the scarf to her chest. "I told myself it didn't matter. That you were his father in every way that mattered. And you are. You are. But every time I looked at him, I saw Julian too, and it ate at me. I hated myself for hiding it, but I was terrified of losing you, of losing this family." Ethan let out a bitter laugh that carried no humor. "And now you've risked losing both." The words cut through her, and she crumpled against the wall, sobs shaking her shoulders. Julian appeared at the end of the hall, his coat in hand, his expression grim. "I should leave," he said quietly. His eyes flicked to Ethan, filled with something between regret and shame. "This isn't the place for me tonight." "You're damn right it isn't," Ethan growled. Julian nodded once, as if he expected nothing less. "But tomorrow, we need to talk. All of us." Ethan's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. Julian left quietly, the front door clicking shut with a finality that echoed through the house. Mara wiped her face, her voice hoarse. "Please, Ethan, I know you hate me right now, but I need you to believe I never stopped loving you. What I did, it wasn't about choosing him over you. It was fear, cowardice. But my heart, don't." Ethan snapped, his voice cracking with restrained pain. "Don't talk about love tonight. You broke at the moment you let me believe a lie." Mara sagged against the wall, her sobs hollowing the space between them. Ethan turned his back to her, returning to Noah's room. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his son's sleeping face, every muscle rigid with a mix of heartbreak and resolve. Tomorrow, he thought grimly. Tomorrow, the truth comes out in full. No more shadows. But in that quiet, as Noah stirred and reached instinctively for his father's hand, Ethan understood the choice he would face. Rage at Mara and Julian, or protect the boy who still whispered dad in his sleep. For now, he chose to stay, to keep holding the one thing that was still his. Noah's breathing evened out, small puffs warming the blanket where his cheek rested. Ethan stayed until the boy's fist loosened around his finger, then eased his hand free and stood. The house had gone hush. No music, no clink of glasses, only the thin hiss of dying embers. In the hall, a shadow shifted. Mara, barefoot, red dress dulled now, the scarf limp in her fist like a surrendered flag. "I'll sleep on the couch," she whispered. "You can have a room." Ethan didn't answer. He walked past her to the kitchen, turned on the sink so the noise would mask any stray words drifting toward Noah's door, and stared at the roses he'd abandoned on the counter. Their petals had curled at the edges, as if the night had aged them hours. Mara followed to the threshold and leaned on the frame. "I'm sorry," she said, voice raw. "I know that word doesn't fix anything, but it's the only one I have left." Ethan shut off the water. The quiet came back, heavier than before. He reached into his coat, brought out the phone he'd buried there, and unlocked the screen. The subject line waited, bright and merciless. "Results ready. Confidential." Mara's face tightened. "Ethan, not tonight." He met her eyes. "Tonight is exactly when." He tapped. A progress wheel. Then numbers, allele markers, a line in plain language under it all that didn't bother with science. He didn't read it aloud. He didn't need to. He lifted his gaze, and in a voice that didn't shake, spoke 6 words that cracked the house like ice. "DNA says Noah isn't my son." Mara stopped breathing. Her fingers spasmed around the scarf. It slid from her hand and puddled at her feet. For a second, she looked like she might run. Then she didn't. She stayed and took the hit. Ethan set the phone face down on the counter. "Now we're done pretending," he said, quieter than before. "How long have you known?" Her eyes glistened. "Since 8 weeks," she whispered. "I told myself I'd tell you at 10. Then 12. Then after the birth. Then after his first steps. Every time, it felt crueler to tear the ground out from under you. And me. And him. And so you waited," he said, "until he could draw a broken heart and spell another man's name." She flinched. "I told him to stop because I panicked, not because I hate the truth. I hate what it does." Ethan rinsed a plate that didn't need rinsing. "Truth doesn't do anything by itself," he said. "People do. You did." Her shoulders bowed. "If I could hand you back the years you gave freely, I would. I can't. All I can do is stand here and not run." Ethan looked at the velvet box on the table, the stupid, loyal thing still waiting for a moment that had already died. He slid it into a drawer without a sound. "I won't burn the house down," he said. "No scenes, no yelling. Noah sleeps down the hall. Tomorrow we tell him together, carefully. We call a counselor. We set rules. You move to the guest room, tonight. Julian stays away until we agree on how to do this." Mara swallowed. "Yes. And you stop dancing around the truth," he added. "No secrets. Not about schedules. Not about him." He nodded toward the front door Julian had used. "If you keep anything else from me, we're done trying." Mara's lips trembled. "Are we trying?" Ethan's answer took a long moment to come. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I know what I am to Noah. That part isn't up for debate." A floorboard creaked down the hall. Both of them froze, listening. No footsteps followed. Only the house, settling, and the faint, steady pulse of the refrigerator. Mara bent, picked up the scarf, and folded it with a care that looked like grief. "I'll take the couch," she said. "Wake me if he needs me." Ethan nodded. As she turned away, he added, almost to himself, "We build this next part on facts, not wishes." She paused, then kept walking, red dress whispering against the floor. When the lights clicked off and the kitchen returned to shadow, Ethan stayed a minute longer with the roses. He trimmed the stems, found a vase, and set them in water. Not because the night deserved beauty, but because Noah would wake and see them and believe, for a moment, that some things still lived. He turned toward the hall, squared his shoulders, and went back to the boy who had chosen his hand in the dark. The house held its breath. Ethan eased Noah's door mostly closed, leaving the familiar finger-width gap the boy liked, then sank into the hallway chair, as if someone had turned up gravity. From the living room, the couch springs murmured, Mara shifting, wide awake. The digital clock on the stove marched through the hours. 1:47, 2:23, 3:11. Somewhere after 3, Noah whimpered, a small, fractured sound. Ethan was on his feet before it finished. Bad dream, he whispered, kneeling by the bed. Noah nodded, eyes glassy. I heard voices. They're done for tonight, Ethan said. He smoothed the blanket and stayed, forearm on the mattress, until the boy's breath fell back into rhythm. When Ethan tried to stand, Noah's fingers found his again. Ethan didn't pull away. At dawn, the house was slate gray. Ethan slipped to the kitchen, set a pan on low heat, and stirred eggs he knew Noah would barely touch. The roses he'd salvaged last night stood in their vase, obstinate, as if refusing to agree with anything else. He heard the couch creak and then soft footsteps. Mara stopped at the threshold. Sleeves of an old sweatshirt pushed to her elbows, the scarf gone. Bare, human, smaller. Thank you for staying with him, she said. Ethan didn't answer. He plated eggs, left a third plate empty. The third plate felt like a verdict. Noah shuffled in, hair pointing in every direction, bare tucked under one arm. He climbed onto a chair and blinked at the food. Is it still Valentine's? It's Saturday, Ethan said gently. We'll make it a different kind of day. Noah glanced between them, bright curiosity and dark worry warring in his face. Am I in trouble for the name? Ethan sat, leaning in. You're not in trouble for any name. You were trying to understand something that the grown-ups should have explained better. He waited. The boy's shoulders lowered a notch. Mara took a breath. After breakfast, we'll talk together, she said carefully. Not secrets, just simple truth. Noah chewed, thoughtful. Do simple truths hurt? Sometimes, Ethan said. But they don't make you guess. A phone buzzed on the counter. Mara's. She flinched, turned it over, then set it face down without looking. The room felt smaller. Ethan's own phone hummed a second later. An email from the school, subject line, blood typing consent reminder. He swallowed a bitter laugh. Fate, punctual as ever. When Noah was busy coaxing his bear to taste an egg, Ethan opened the family laptop, pulled up a blank document, and typed a heading in block letters. Rules after today. He listed without flourish, no secrets. Neutral places for hard talks. Sleep schedule stays. No surprise visits. Introduce Julian slowly. Counselor. ASAP. Mara stood behind him, reading. At no surprise visits. Her mouth tightened. He texted last night, she said. I didn't answer. But he asked what time. Ethan didn't look up. He waits until we decide. Not the other way around. A long beat, then a small nod. Okay. Noah patted over, put his palm on the trackpad, and drew clumsy circles. What's that? A plan, Ethan said. Plans keep scary things from getting bigger. Noah seemed to weigh that, then hopped down. Can we draw later? Not hearts. Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are honest, Ethan said. It made Noah smile. After dishes, Mara motioned toward the back door. 2 minutes. She led Ethan onto the porch in a cold air that shocked them both awake. Her breath smoked in small bursts. I called Dr. Levin's office, she said. Family therapy. Voicemail. I asked for the earliest opening. Ethan nodded. A small, practical thing. The only kind that counted now. Good. Mara wrapped her arms around herself. He looks like Julian when he sleeps, she said, voice frayed. And like you when he's scared. She winced at her own words. That sounded cruel. I'm sorry. It sounded true, Ethan said. Truth is clumsy at first. Back inside, Noah had migrated to the living room. He'd arranged markers in 2 neat rows and was tapping the caps like piano keys. Can I write both names? He asked without looking up. On one paper, so it stops ripping. Ethan felt something in his chest loosen and then sting. We'll make a new page, he said. Whole. Mara knelt beside Noah. Can I help? He considered, then slid a marker toward her without meeting her eyes. Forgiveness didn't move quickly, but it moved. The doorbell rang. All 3 froze. Ethan's shoulders rose. Mara's hand flattened on the carpet, as if to steady the floor. Noah's head snapped up, eyes wide. Stay here, Ethan said. He crossed the hall and looked through the peephole. Julian stood on the porch in a dark jacket, hands empty, posture careful. A beat of furnace-hot anger rolled through Ethan and passed. Behind it, a colder, steadier thing spoke. Rules. He opened the door half a foot, enough for air and voice. We said we'd decide time, Ethan said, keeping his tone low. Julian nodded, jaw tight. I know. I didn't come in. I won't. He exhaled, words frosting. I barely slept. I thought if there's any chance to say, I'll do this your way, I should say it in person and leave. Text works, Ethan said. I know, Julian repeated. But I wanted you to see my face when I said it. Ethan measured the man, the way regret had curved his shoulders forward. He didn't admire him. He didn't hate him. He filed him under problem to solve without breaking a child. Fine, Ethan said. You're seen. Julian swallowed. Whenever you say, however slow you say, I add or I don't show. Ethan considered, then glanced back down the hall. Noah stood at the corner, half hidden, clutching the bear, eyes enormous. Behind him, Mara stayed kneeling by the markers, motionless. Tomorrow, Ethan said. Public place. 30 minutes. I stay in the room. No titles, no claims. Just names. Julian's relief looked almost like pain. Tomorrow, he echoed. Thank you. He stepped back from the threshold, as if distance were the first gift he could offer, and turned to go. Ethan closed the door, leaned his forehead against the wood for a second, then locked it. Who was it? Noah asked from the hall, even though he knew. A man who wants to meet you, Ethan said. He'll wait until we say yes. Noah's chin lifted a little, testing the weight of the words. He nodded, slow, accepting the shape of a day that would not break him. Can we draw the dinosaurs now? We can, Ethan said. He shot Mara a look that was not soft and not cruel, just exact. After we finished the plan, they spread paper on the rug. Ethan wrote the first line in thick block letters. We tell the truth the first time. Noah traced each letter with a smaller hand, and the ink bled a little, and nobody tried to stop it. The living room floor was littered with markers and papers. Noah had drawn a dinosaur with teeth too big for its head, the kind of sketch only a child could make feel cheerful instead of frightening. Ethan sat cross-legged beside him, watching the boy's concentration, while Mara hovered a cautious distance away, her knees tucked to her chest on the edge of the couch. The air still carried the residue of last night, the weight of confessions, the echo of those 6 words that had broken everything. But here, on the rug, life pretended to be ordinary. Noah glanced up. Can the dinosaur have 2 names? Like one on each side of his tail. Ethan managed a small smile. Sure, but maybe write them on the same page, not 2 ripped ones. Mara flinched but didn't interrupt. She reached for a marker, hesitated, then asked, May I? Noah slid her a green one without looking. It wasn't forgiveness, it was allowance. She accepted it quietly, drawing grass under the dinosaur's feet, as though grounding it on paper could ground them too. The doorbell from earlier still echoed in Ethan's mind. Julian had promised to wait, and Ethan believed him. But that promise stretched over every moment like a taut string. Tomorrow would be another storm. When the clock struck noon, Ethan stood. Noah, go wash up. We'll have lunch. The boy patted away, his bear under one arm. As soon as his door shut, Ethan turned to Mara, his expression hardening. He can't feel like we're improvising. He needs a map, Mara. That means no more surprises. Mara nodded quickly, hands clasped together. I agree. That's why I called Dr. Levin again this morning. Left another message. We need someone to guide this, not just us. Good, Ethan said. But until then, we make the rules. He doesn't see Julian without me. He doesn't hear half-truths. If Julian slips, if you slip, it's over. Mara's face crumbled. Ethan, I don't want to lose this family. Please believe me. I made terrible choices, yes, but her voice cracked. I never stopped loving you. Ethan's jaw tightened. Love doesn't cover lies. Not ones this big. The sound of small footsteps interrupted them. Noah reappeared, damp hair sticking to his forehead. He looked at both of them, eyes sharp with the awareness of a child who understood far more than he should. You were fighting again. Ethan crouched. Not fighting, buddy. Talking. Hard talking. It sounded like fighting, Noah muttered. He dropped into his chair at the table, hugging his knees up. Ethan shot Mara a warning glance. Not now. They ate in silence, the clink of forks scraping louder than usual. Noah pushed food around his plate, then suddenly asked, Is the man coming back today? Both adults froze. Ethan forced calm into his voice. No, not today. Only when we all agree. And when you're ready. Noah studied him, as if testing for cracks. And if I'm never ready? Ethan reached across, covering his son's small hand. Then he waits forever. Noah's shoulders loosened slightly. He gave a small nod and went back to his plate. After lunch, Ethan pulled on his coat. I'll get groceries, he said. He needed air, distance. Mara started to rise, but he stopped her with a look. Stay. Be with him. The store aisles blurred past him, his basket filling with automatic movements, milk, bread, cereal. But his thoughts churned. Tomorrow's meeting with Julian loomed. How do you introduce a child to his biological father without shattering him? How do you stay strong when every reminder of betrayal sits across the table? Back at home, Ethan set the bags down. From the hallway, he heard Noah laughing, high pure, unguarded. For a moment, hope loomed. He followed the sound and stopped. Mara was dancing with Noah in the living room, clumsy, playful, spinning him until he collapsed into giggles. The music wasn't slow or intimate. It was loud, silly, something from Noah's cartoon playlist. Still, the sight hit Ethan like a blade. Just last night, she had been in that same spot, in that same dress, dancing with Julian. Noah noticed him first. Dad, come dance. Ethan forced a smile. I'll watch, buddy. Mara's eyes met his over Noah's head. There was no flirtation, no hidden agenda this time. Just exhaustion, regret, and a silent plea. Don't take this from him. Ethan stayed in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching his son spin in circles, his laughter echoing. But inside, he knew the laughter couldn't mask the fracture. Tomorrow would bring the first true test, and this time, there would be no rugs left to sweep the truth under. Morning came sharp and cold, the kind that made the windows mist over before the sun fully broke. Ethan stood at the sink, mug of coffee warming his hand, staring at the frost outside while rehearsing the rules again in his head. 30 minutes. Public place. No claims, no surprises. Just names. Behind him, Noah padded into the kitchen, hair still mussed from sleep, his bear tucked under one arm. Are we going somewhere? He asked. His tone was cautious, as though he already knew. Ethan crouched to his eye level. Yes, buddy. Just a short visit. Somewhere safe. You'll meet someone who wants to know you. But remember, nothing changes about who your dad is. Noah studied him, then whispered, You? Always me, Ethan said firmly, cupping the boy's cheek. Mara appeared in the doorway, pale but dressed neatly, as though clothing could cover the cracks in her. She had avoided eye contact all morning, her hands busy with pointless tasks. When Ethan turned to her, his eyes were sharp. 30 minutes. You follow my lead. She nodded. I understand. The cafe was warm against the winter air, all golden light and clinking cups. Ethan chose a table near the back where he could see the door. Noah sat between them, fidgeting with his bear. His small legs swung under the chair, not reaching the floor. The door chimed. Julian entered, coat buttoned, hair damp from melted frost. He scanned the room, spotted them, and froze for a heartbeat before making his way over. His steps were careful, his hands empty, his expression one of contained nerves. Hi, Julian said quietly, stopping at the table. His eyes dropped to Noah. The boy looked up, wide-eyed, hugging his bear close. The resemblance between them was undeniable. The same dimple when Julian's lips twitched in a nervous half-smile. This is Julian, Ethan said, his voice calm but deliberate. He wanted to meet you. Noah didn't answer right away. He looked at Ethan, as if asking for permission. Ethan nodded gently. You can say hi if you want. No pressure. Hi, Noah whispered. Julian's throat bobbed. Hi, Noah. It's really nice to meet you. The silence stretched. A server passed by, placing cups on a nearby table, the hiss of the espresso machine filling the gap. Mara shifted uncomfortably, about to speak, but Ethan cut her off with a glance. This was Noah's moment, not hers. Julian finally tried again. I like dinosaurs too, he said softly, spotting the sticker on Noah's bear. Did you know the T-Rex had teeth the size of bananas? Noah blinked, caught off guard. A tiny smile, crept across his face. Really? Really? Julian said, his dimple flashing. Biggest bite of any land animal. Noah giggled, the first sound breaking the tension. Ethan watched closely, every muscle alert. He couldn't deny the natural ease between them. It wasn't forced, it wasn't contrived. And that terrified him more than anger ever could. The 30 minutes passed in cautious exchanges. Dinosaurs, favorite colors, cartoons. Julian never pushed, never reached across the table. He only answered questions, and sometimes he didn't answer at all, letting Noah lead. But when the time was nearly up, Julian slipped. His voice softened, too tender, too loaded. I'd love to take you to the museum someday. Just us. They have a whole dinosaur hall. Ethan's hand tightened around his coffee cup. That's not how this works, he said firmly. No promises. No invitations. Not yet. Julian's face flushed. He nodded quickly. I'm sorry. You're right. Noah's smile faltered, sensing the shift. He turned to Ethan. Dad, are we leaving now? Yes, Ethan said, rising. He placed money on the table, even though they hadn't ordered anything. That's enough for today. They left without looking back. Outside, the air was sharp, the sun glaring off the icy sidewalks. Noah clutched Ethan's hand tightly, his bear tucked under his other arm. Was he nice? Ethan asked gently as they walked. Noah hesitated. He was okay. But he smiled like me. That was weird. Ethan's heart twisted. He crouched, pulling Noah close. Listen to me. Smiles, names, none of that changes the truth. I am your dad. Always. Noah nodded, reassured, but Ethan caught the flicker of confusion still swimming in his son's eyes. Behind them, Mara walked in silence, her face pale, her steps heavy. She knew as well as Ethan did. The hardest part hadn't even begun. Tomorrow, 30 minutes would no longer be enough. The house felt colder that night, as though the heat had slipped out with the truth they'd carried back from the cafe. Ethan tucked Noah into bed, reading the same dinosaur book twice, forcing his voice steady even as his mind replayed every look Julian had given, every spark of recognition on Noah's face. When the boy finally drifted off, still clutching his bear, Ethan lingered by the doorway, watching the rise and fall of his chest. Protecting him felt simple here in the quiet. The storm outside that door was another matter. Mara sat at the kitchen table, untouched tea cooling beside her. She lifted her eyes as Ethan entered, exhaustion carved into her face. He handled it better than I thought, she whispered. Ethan pulled out the chair opposite, lowering himself slowly. He handled it because I was there, because he had an anchor. That doesn't mean it didn't shake him. Mara's hands twisted in her lap. Julian, you meant well. I know he overstepped with the museum thing, but he what? Ethan snapped, voice sharp. He's not a dad who missed a few birthdays, Mara. He's a stranger who showed up at our table yesterday. That's not fixed with a field trip. Her lips pressed tight, but she didn't argue. The silence stretched until Ethan leaned forward, his eyes fierce. I can't keep this steady if you keep softening for him. You can't be both protector and apologist. Choose where you stand. Her breath hitched. I stand with Noah. Ethan studied her, looking for cracks. Then prove it. Tomorrow, when Julian comes again, you set the boundary with me. He needs to hear it from you too. Mara nodded, but the hesitation in her eyes was unmistakable. The next afternoon came too quickly. Julian arrived exactly on time, a cautious figure on the porch. Ethan opened the door, expression unreadable. 30 minutes, he said. Living room. Ground rules stay. Julian nodded, stepping inside carefully, as though the floor might reject him. Mara was already seated on the couch, Noah beside her, bear in his lap. His wide eyes tracked Julian nervously. Julian crouched a little, his voice soft. Hey, buddy. Good to see you again. Noah glanced at Ethan before answering. Hi. The first minutes were safe. Dinosaurs, favorite ice cream flavors. Noah showing the drawing he'd made that morning. But the tension was thick. Ethan sat in a chair opposite, every word measured, every gesture noted. Then it happened. Julian reached into his coat and pulled out a small wrapped box. I got you something, he said, voice gentle. Just a little gift. Ethan was on his feet before Noah touched it. No, he said firmly. We agreed. No surprises. Julian's face flushed. It's just a book about dinosaurs. Nothing big. I thought. You thought wrong. Ethan cut him off. His tone was calm, but it carried a razor's edge. He doesn't need bribes. He doesn't need you rushing in like you can make up for years in 1 week. Noah shrank into the couch, clutching his bear. Mara reached for him, but her hand trembled. Julian set the box on the table, his voice tightening. I'm not trying to replace you, Ethan. I just want him to know I care. Ethan leaned forward, eyes locked on him. You show care by respecting boundaries. By waiting until he's ready. Not by deciding what you think he needs. The room pulsed with silence. Mara's tears spilled quietly. Noah looked from one man to the other, his small chest rising fast. Finally, Julian lowered his gaze. You're right, he murmured. I'll slow down. Ethan exhaled, the tension easing only slightly. He crouched beside Noah, smoothing his hair. You okay, buddy? Noah nodded shakily, though his grip on the bear told the truth. When Julian left, the gift still sat, unopened on the table. Ethan didn't move it. He wanted Noah to see it stay there, untouched, until he chose. Later that night, Noah asked softly, Why does he keep coming if I didn't ask? Ethan pulled him close, his voice steady. Because he wants to know you. But remember, what you want matters most. You get to choose when and how. And no matter what, I'm here. Noah relaxed against him, whispering, I want you here more. And as Ethan held him, he realized the worst was still to come. Not the introductions, not the awkward visits, but the day when Noah would ask the one question Ethan couldn't answer without reopening every wound. Why didn't Mom tell the truth sooner? That reckoning was on its way, as inevitable as the morning. The unopened gift sat on the coffee table like a live wire. Every time Noah walked past it, his eyes lingered, but he never reached for it. Ethan left it there deliberately, a silent reminder that choices belonged to Noah, not to the adults who kept reshaping his world. That evening, the house was hushed. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, drafting a custody plan with neat, square handwriting. School pickups, visitation times, therapy sessions. Across from him, Mara stared at the paper, her hands clasped together, lips pressed thin. Ethan, she whispered finally, we can't live like this forever. Rules and schedules. It feels like we're dismantling everything we built. Ethan's pen didn't stop. We're not dismantling. We're rebuilding, with truth this time. Mara's eyes brimmed. And if it breaks for good, then it breaks, Ethan said quietly. But at least it won't be a lie anymore. Before Mara could answer, a small voice carried from the hallway. Why didn't you tell me? Both froze. Noah stood there in his pajamas, bear hanging from one arm, his face pale but determined. His eyes weren't wide with fear this time. They were narrowed, searching. Mara's breath caught. Noah. The boy stepped closer. Why didn't you tell me he was my other dad? Why did I have to find out because I spelled it wrong? His voice cracked, the pain sharper because it came from such a small frame. Mara dropped to her knees, trembling. I was scared, she whispered. I thought if I told you too soon, it would hurt you. I wanted to protect you. Noah's chin quivered, but he shook his head fiercely. It hurt worse to be lied to. Ethan's heart twisted. He crossed the room and crouched beside Noah, steadying him with a hand on his shoulder. He's right, Mara. Lies don't protect. They wound deeper. Tears spilled down Mara's cheeks. She reached for Noah, but he pulled back, clutching his bear tight. You said I couldn't write the name. Like it was wrong. But it's not wrong. No, Mara choked out. It's not wrong. It was me who was wrong. I didn't want you to feel divided, Noah. I wanted you to believe everything was whole. Noah's lip trembled. But it's not whole. It's broken. Silence crushed the room. Ethan held him close, feeling the boy's small chest shudder against his. Broken things can be fixed, buddy, he murmured. But only if we stop pretending they're not broken. Mara sobbed openly now, her voice hoarse. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. Both of you. You deserved better than my fear. Noah turned his face into Ethan's chest, refusing to look at her. I just wanted to be us, he whispered. You and me. Ethan's throat closed. He smoothed the boy's hair, whispering, It will always be us. That will never change. He looked over Noah's head at Mara, his eyes steel. And that's what he needs to hear from you, too. Mara swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. Noah, no matter what, Ethan is your dad. He always has been, and he always will be. Nothing will change that. I promise. For the first time, Noah turned to her, his eyes wet and searching. Then why did you hide it? Mara hesitated, her face crumbling. Because I was a coward, she admitted. Because I was afraid of losing the life I loved. But in trying to keep it, I almost lost everything. Noah studied her, silent. Then he turned back to Ethan, curling into him like the answer was already chosen. That night, when Noah finally fell asleep between them, Mara sat in the dark with tears streaking her cheeks. Ethan didn't look at her, didn't speak. He just kept one arm wrapped around his son, anchoring him, while his other hand rested on the draft of the custody plan. The truth was out now. But the fallout, the choice of what this family would become, was only beginning. And deep down, Ethan knew, tomorrow, the final reckoning would arrive. Morning light spilled pale across the curtains, stretching long bars of gold onto the floor. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat in a chair by Noah's bed, watching his son stir, the boy's hand still clutching the ear of his worn bear. Mara had dozed curled on the couch, face blotched from the night's tears. The house felt suspended, waiting for judgment. When Noah woke, he blinked up at Ethan. Is he coming today? His voice was small, edged with worry. Ethan brushed his hair back. Only if you want. Remember? You decide. Noah frowned, thinking hard. I don't want to go alone. Not yet. You won't. Ethan promised. Never. By mid-morning, the three of them sat at the kitchen table. Ethan had laid out the custody plan he drafted, black and white lines on paper meant to hold back chaos. Mara stared at it with swollen eyes, Julian's name printed beside scheduled visits. She looked like the ink itself was burning her. A knock at the door shattered the silence. Ethan rose, spine straight. Julian stood outside, shoulders tense but posture respectful. He carried nothing this time. No gift, no excuses, just his bare hands. Inside, Noah stiffened. Ethan crouched beside him. Remember what I said. You choose how this goes. Noah nodded and whispered, he can come in, but only for a little. Julian stepped carefully into the living room. He lowered himself onto the rug, not the couch, making himself smaller. Hi, Noah. The boy clutched his bear, silent for a moment. Then, why didn't you come before? Julian's breath caught. He looked at Ethan, then back to Noah. Because I didn't know I was supposed to. I thought your life was full already. And when I found out the truth, I was scared too. But I shouldn't have waited. I'm sorry. The honesty in his tone unsettled Ethan. It was clumsy, but it was truth. Noah studied him, then asked the question Ethan had feared most. If you're my dad too, then who am I? Ethan's chest tightened. He pulled Noah into his lap, steadying him. You're Noah, and you are ours. But being a dad isn't just about names or who helped make you. It's about who stays. Who loves you every day. That's me. That's always me. Noah's eyes glistened. He whispered, I wanted to stay you. Ethan kissed the top of his head. It will. No matter what else happens, I'm your dad. Julian's face crumpled, but he didn't protest. Instead, he nodded. That's right. He's your dad. I'm just someone who wants to know you, if you'll let me. Slowly, carefully. The boy didn't answer, but his grip on Ethan tightened. Mara's voice broke the silence. We can't undo the past, she said hoarsely. But we can choose honesty from here on. She looked at Ethan, her eyes swollen but steady. If you'll allow it. Ethan met her gaze. For a long moment, nothing passed between them but the shared wreckage of years. Then he shook his head slightly. This isn't about what I allow. It's about what Noah needs. And he needs stability. That means boundaries. Julian inclined his head. Understood. The plan was signed that afternoon. 30-minute visits, always supervised, always on schedule. No gifts, no promises, no blurring lines. Mara moved into the guest room permanently. The marriage, fragile as glass, was no longer spoken of in terms of if. Only for now. That evening, Ethan tucked Noah into bed again. The boy's eyes drooped, his whisper faint. You won't leave, right? Ethan held him close. Never. When Noah's breathing evened out, Ethan sat in the dark, staring at the unopened velvet box still in the drawer. A proposal for a life that never truly existed. He closed it carefully, placed it at the back of the desk, and let it stay buried. Mara stood in the doorway, her voice low. "Thank you for not breaking when you could have." Ethan didn't look at her. "I didn't do it for you." He smoothed Noah's hair once more, then whispered the words that anchored him as much as they anchored the boy. "I'm your dad. That will never change." And for the first time since Valentine's night, the house felt steady, not whole, not healed, but standing on something firmer than lies.